To begin the non-traditional ways of burial, the first type of non-tradition that will be introduced is space burial. Space burial is an option that allows an individual's remains to be launched into outer space. The cremated remains take a ride on a rocket that is shot into outer space. The first post-cremation memorial spaceflight was completed in 1997. Unlike other forms of cremation burials, space burial only allots 1 to 7 grams, which is 0.04 to 0.25 ounces of the remains to be launched, which is about the size of a lipstick container. The reason behind the amount of remains that are sent for the burial are to keep the cost affordable, since the launch cost is already expensive. The rest of the remains are scattered around the launching site. Celestis Memorial Space Flights out of Houston, Texas, provides prices for the launching services. They start at a low orbit journey, or a journey that allows you to reach zero gravity before returning to Earth, which costs $1,295. Next, they offer a chance to orbit the Earth and eventually burn up in the atmosphere for about $4,995. The last option is to have the remains launched to the moon or deep space for $10,000 and $12,500 respectively. So far, ashes from 600 people have been shot outer space, but there has only been one to go to the moon. His name was Eugene Shoemaker, a geologist and trainer for those boarding the Apollo. He was the only man to reach the moon. Celestis has also made viewing this experience possible via the internet. Mourners all over the world are able to observe the event. People from various cultures and religions can tailor their memorial how they want it. This can be done via streaming through audio, visual, and text sources, which can be chosen by the individual. Consumers can participate with others who are celebrating the same person's death. Videos can be broadcast throughout the participating group or just to one specific person. Eternal reefs. Initially, eternal reefs were created to restore the health of reefs in the Florida Keys. Don Brawley, the founder of Eternal Reefs, wanted to help increase the number of reefs in the area where they were deteriorating. Brawley and Barber found a way to build systems that were capable of recreating the natural marine environment, as well as aid in the development of coral and microorganisms. This concept became what is known as reef balls. Brawley's father-in-law sparked the idea for placing cremated remains into the reef balls. He stated that this was the way that he wanted to be memorialized. It was not until the passing of Brawley's father-in-law in 1998 that cremated remains were actually placed into a reef ball, and thus began the business of eternal reefs. This burial has grown tremendously over the years. The appeal comes from the idea that although an individual is in their resting place, there is still a lot of life going on around them. It is like a living legacy. Prices for eternal reefs include the Aquarius Eternal Reef, Nautilus Eternal Reef, and Marina Eternal Reef. The Aquarius Eternal Reef is 650 to 800 pounds, and it costs $3,995. This is the smallest eternal reef. The Nautilus is 1,200 to 1,500 pounds. It costs $4,995. It's the medium-sized reef, and it provides excellent habitats for all sea life. It can accommodate up to 2 sets of remains and is frequently used for individuals and their pets. The Marina Eternal Reef, which is the largest one, is 3,800 to 4,000 pounds. It costs $7,000, and it's the largest of the 4 of the reefs. It attracts larger species of sea life, and it accommodates up to 4 sets of the remains, and is frequently used for spouses and other family members together.
Cremation is one of the most economic and hygienic means to dispose of a deceased body. It has become a fully acceptable alternative to burial. Cremation consists of exposing the mortal remains to extreme fire and heat in a crematory oven. The resultant bone fragments and cremains are then ground and minced to a sand-like consistency. This is what we know to be ashes, and it gives them a uniform and consistent size. The remains are now ready for distribution, whether to be given to a family member or others, or to even be scattered. There are many ways one can cherish a loved one after being cremated. In this paper, we will discuss numerous ways a loved one's ashes can be used or dispersed. People are beginning to go the non-traditional route and escaping from their traditional funerals. This allows for creativity to flow and for the family member to choose what he or she wants to do with the remaining ashes. The options are almost limitless. The first option we will discuss is diamonds. Yep, that's right, diamonds. The company Alvardanza, along with other companies, are beginning to create diamonds out of the cremated remains. Here, the remains are under high heat and pressure that imitate the conditions within the earth, which compresses them into diamonds. Another interesting way to memorialize your loved one is to have their ashes along with ink tattooed on your body. A small amount of ashes is mixed with the ink that is used for tattoos. Then the tattoo artist will proceed to its usual tattoo. The challenge is having the cremated remains fine enough to be able to blend smoothly with the ink. A columbarium is a mausoleum for cremains. Mausoleums hold the entire body, while a columbarium holds the urns in which the cremated body is in. A columbarium were not initially built for housing urns. In fact, it was built for housing large communities of doves and pigeons. The word columbarium is from the Italian word columba, which means dove. The original columbarium consists of shells called niches. Niches were used to house birds and are now permanent homes for the remains of your loved ones. Today, columbariums vary in architectural structure and are elegant yet very simple. An identification label is placed outside of the niche to be able to locate your loved one. Companies such as Heavens Above, and Angel Flight, and Heavenly Star Fireworks all provide memorial displays. The companies take a small amount of remains and incorporate them into the building of the fireworks. Depending on the family's wishes, they can have a professionally launched display or choose to purchase memorial fireworks that can be launched themselves. The family can gather around to watch the fireworks show from the remains of their loved one. If a family member wants to go the route of spreading ashes, one must do so legally. One way one can scatter ashes is in the water. This may require chartering a boat for a few hours. Family and friends set out on a voyage to the desired spot in the ocean. The cremated remains are placed in the water and allowed to descend into the water. The boat needs to be placed into the wind and moving at the right speed. If done incorrectly, the ashes may end up back on the boat instead of the water. You can also scatter ashes over water using a water-soluble scattering urn. With the water-soluble scattering urn, the cremated remains are placed in the urn and the urn is dropped in the water, where it will dissolve, leaving the ashes in the water.
Reformation, a neurologium meant to suggest rebirth, can be defined as resolving the body back to its basic organic components and its rapid and beneficial return to our ecosystem.
reuse as nature had originally designed. Resumation, also known as a biocremation, is an accelerated version of what takes place in natural decomposition and was first proposed for use in Europe as a method of disposing of cows infected with biofilm. It is a respectful, water-based alternative to burial and cremation with clear environmental benefits. The body is placed in a stainless steel cremation chamber where water, 95%, and alkali, 5%, heat and pressure are added to rapidly reduce the body sympathetically to ash. During the funeral process, a funeral involving resumation would be considered the same as a flame cremation, where cremation uses fossil fuels to produce the very high temperature necessary to burn a body. It fouls the air with mercury particles, dioxins, and other environmentally harsh pollutants. Resumation, by comparison, uses lower temperatures and therefore less fuel that emits little to nothing into the atmosphere, except for some localized unpleasant odors. Resumation benefits the earth by providing a significantly smaller carbon footprint and less energy required in the form of electricity and gas with no airborne mercury emissions. The process of resumation is a special wool coffin that is placed into the resumation chamber instead of the conventional fire methods of cremation. Since resumation can only accommodate protein-based material, loved ones must wear clothing made of silk, wool, or leather during the process of resumation. In the U.S., resumation is marketed as green cremation in Minnesota and sometimes referred to as water resumation. It is more expensive than cremation, although with only a few resumators around and each costing around $440,000 US. Resumation is currently only approved in 6 U.S. states: Maine, Colorado, Florida, Minnesota, Oregon, and Maryland, with reviews being conducted in several more and is gaining popularity in Europe. Families who choose green cremation can still hold a meaningful event, gathering, or memorial service to celebrate and honor the life of their loved one. In the words of Sandy Sullivan, the founder of Resumation, Resumation now offers a new, innovative, yet dignified approach which uses significantly less energy and emits significantly less greenhouse gases than flame cremation, and is another needed option that the public clearly wants and the environment clearly needs.
Do-it-yourself funerals, also known as DIY. Usually if you want to do something on your own, you go to Pinterest or other online sites. But this, my friend, requires much more. When doing a do-it-yourself funeral, you are in charge and are signed up to do just about everything. There's no funeral director, so you are in charge of planning your funeral and all aspects of the funeral, such as the funeral service, flower arrangements, and etc. I will go into discussion about some aspects of DIY funerals. If you are interested in having a final arrangement in your home, you need to be aware of the laws that apply. In all states, it is legal to have a body at home for the funerals, but each state has different laws. In most states, a family member or designated agent can act in lieu of a funeral director and legally keep the deceased at home until transport for burial or cremation. In some states, the designated agent must hold a durable power of attorney for healthcare. Currently, Connecticut, Indiana, Louisiana, Michigan, Nebraska, New York, and Utah have laws making the home funeral process difficult without the involvement of a funeral director. In these states, for example, you may have to pay the funeral director to obtain bureau transit permits and other after-death documents. Some states require a report of death in addition to a death certificate. In other states, a body can be moved following the home funeral only with medical permission. In other states, a disposition permit and burial transit permit are required. Keep that in mind as you pre-plan a home funeral. It is very important to know the laws of your state. When planning to do a home funeral, you must act quickly because the body instantly begins to deteriorate. A body can be kept at home for 3 to 5 days without significant deterioration, with the use of fans, dry ice, or ice packs. Dry ice will keep the body below 48 degrees, which is the required temperature for an unembalmed body. Frozen gel packs can also be temporarily used for adults, but is recommended for children. The ice packs should be placed on all major parts of the body. The room that the body in also should be set to a low temperature. The bodies of the deceased are not required to be embalmed. That is a choice of the family. One vital reason in choosing to do it yourself is the cost. Without using a funeral director or limiting the use to minimum, the cost will be far less. Do it yourself is far less cheaper than the traditional funeral. An estimate for a traditional funeral costs around $7,000, and the average cost for home funerals are no more than $2,000. The cost varies depending on what you're planning to make yourself or buy. As long as the casket meets some general standards, you can make it yourself or buy a standard cardboard, press board, and decorate it according to your own wishes. There are casket building companies who are beginning to offer ecological conscious options made from wicker, recycled wood, or cardboard, etc. You also have the right to buy the casket from a business other than a funeral home. It is legal to transport a body within the same town or city after receiving the death certificate. You can transport the body yourself. If you are unable to do so, then you must go through a funeral home to transport the body, which on average costs between $1,000 and $3,000. You are also able to transport the body to the gravesite. Finally, I will discuss the care of the body. If the person dies at the hospital, you can request for the body to be cleaned at the hospital. The nurses will provide you with the needed material and may also help. If the body is at home, there are ways you must clean the body. It is important to wash the hair and the teeth. You must wash the teeth to prevent death breath smell. Wash the entire body with antibacterial, antimicrobial soap. You must be gentle when cleaning the body because the skin is fragile. Washing the body is traditionally considered an act of final respect and or of love and care. It will also tend to slightly slow down the early stages of decomposition and decrease any smell coming from the body. Makeup and hair must be done by the family members. There are many non-profit organizations that will help the families who decide to do home funerals. Home funerals not only help you save significant money, it also gives you more time to spend with your loved ones and help you cope.
Green burial is a natural way for burying the dead that targets reduction in carbon emissions, conservation of energy, natural resources, protection of workers' health, and restoration and preservation of habitat. Green burial seeks to return one's remains to the earth as directly and simply as possible. This includes the burying the deceased without metal caskets, concrete vaults, or embalming with toxic chemicals. The main goal is to reduce the effect of the environment by a way of reducing contaminants and conserving space and promote the growth of the surrounding ecosystem. The idea of the green burial is commonly thought to have come from England, where the practice is widespread. However, it's parted back to the early U.S. pioneers who were buried simply within tall grass. The Ramsey Creek Preserve is the first preservation burial in the ground in the United States and arguably in the world. Billy Campbell founded green burial firm Memorial Ecosystem Inc. and in 1996 he created the first U.S. green cemetery, the 33-acre Ramsey Creek Preserve in Westminster, South Carolina. The land stands between the mountains and Piedmont and has a substantial area that is never cultivated and consequently has an impressive 220 species of vascular plants. When doing a green burial, the body is buried in a natural way that is different to standard practices. Decomposition occurs undeterred by manufactured products typically placed on the ground. Environment beauty is sustained. The organic cycle of life decay and regenerations, death and rebirth, and is optimized. No chemical embalming and fluids or substance are put in the body. No caskets made of metal or laminated with polishes, stains, and varnishes containing synthetic resins or metallic and plastic hardware. Only biodegradable caskets, coffins, or burial shrouds. Garments made from natural material, cotton, linen, wool, silk. No polyester or synthetic fabrics. Decorative paints, paper, and other outer coverage of caskets must be biodegradable, and no liner or vaults at all, including no concrete, metal, or plastic. And non-manufactured belongings tucked inside of the casket. There is a minimum of no grooming, allowing for natural growth of indigenous vegetation without interference by landscaping equipment, which requires fuel to operate. There is also no pesticides or fertilizers. Natural rocks, wildflowers, shrubs, and trees are used as memorial markers instead of manufactured grave markers. There are no artificial flowers, permanent vases, manufactured grave accessories, or unnatural memorial objects. Some of the natural or green cemeteries are park-like, while others are more wild and rustic with little or no purposeful farming. The number of green burial cemeteries approved providers in North America has grown from 1 to more than 300 today, operating in 41 states and 6 departments of Canada, including funeral homes, cemeteries, and product providers. Texas is on the rise of creating green burial cemeteries, but Dallas and Houston do not have green burial cemeteries. In Texas, there are four cities that have green burial cemeteries, which include Austin, San Antonio, Georgetown, and South Lakeway. The price range for green burial are different depending on the state and what cemetery you choose. The price at Ramsey Creek starts from $250 for scattering ashes and to $1,950 for a body burial. Although the prices vary, green burial is still less cheap than traditional burial. The Capsula Mundi is an Italian project that is aiming to present an eco-friendly alternative to bury in a coffin designed by Anna Sotilli and Raoul Bretzel. The coffins are used for 3 days, and it normally takes about 30 to 40 years for a tree to reach its full potential. Like a coffin, the egg-shaped pod is designed to each house a deceased human body for burials. The body will be put into a fetal position within a biodegradable pod and then buried in the ground. From there, a tree is planted above it, allowing its roots to soak its nutrients from the pod and grow. The biodegradable urns. There are now more eco-friendly options that a person can choose from, like placing cremated remains of the deceased into a biodegradable urn that grows into a tree. Some of the trees that are often offered are pine, ginkgo, maple, oak, ash, and beech. By composing the urn into 2 parts, the urn contains a seed which will grow to remember your loved ones. Bio urns can turn death into a revolution and is a good way to return to life through nature. The mushroom death suit was created by co-creator J. Rim Lee and team of designers to create an eco-friendly option to die. This jumpsuit laced with mushroom spore infused fiber called the Infinity Burial Suit. The idea of the mushroom death suit is the mushroom will begin to grow from the body once you've been buried, slowly digesting while neutralizing the environmental contaminants you harbor, such as pesticides, heavy metals, and preservatives in the process. The suit depends on the control of myoremediation, which is the ability of the mushrooms to clean up the toxic contaminants in the environment of the body. Lee and her company have now confirmed their first test subject, which is a 63-year-old Venus Light who's suffering from a terminal neurodegenerative disease called primary progressive aphasia. The mushroom death suit has a waiting list over 100, and that also that the suit is estimated cost of $999.
Of other methods of death, cryonics is the low temperature preservation of people who cannot be sustained by contemporary medicine, with the hope of resuscitation and restoration to full health may be possible in the far future. Cryonics is an experimental procedure that preserves a human being using the best available technology for the purpose of saving his or her life. Research suggests that medical technology will advance further in the future years, enabling it to heal damage at the cellular and molecular levels and to restore full physical and mental health. Cryonics is the act of preserving death as an effort to save lives by using temperatures so cold that a person beyond help by today's medicine might be preserved for decades or centuries until a future medical technology can restore that person to full health. This method is based on modern science, is an experiment in the most literal sense of the word. Cryonics is justified by 3 facts that are not well known. The first fact is that life can be stopped and restarted if its basic structure is preserved. Human embryos are routinely preserved for years at temperatures that completely stop the chemistry of life. Adult humans have survived cooling to those temperatures that stop the heart, brain, and all other organs from functioning for up to an hour. These and many other lessons of biology teach us that life is a particular structure of matter. Life can be stopped and restarted if cell structure and chemistry are preserved sufficiently well. The second fact is vitrification can preserve biological structure very well. Adding high concentrations of chemicals called cryoprotectants to cells permits tissue to be cooled to a very low temperature with little or no ice formation. The state of no ice formation at temperatures below a negative 120 degrees Celsius is called vitrification. It is now possible to physically vitrify organs as large as the human brain, achieving excellent structural preservation without freezing. The current technology favored by Alcor, a life extension foundation, is vitrification, not freezing. Vitrification is an ice-free process in which more than 60% of the water inside the cells is replaced with protective chemicals. This completely prevents freezing during deep cooling. Instead of freezing, molecules just move slower and slower until the chemistry stops at the transition of a glass temperature. Unlike freezing, there is no ice formation or ice damage in vitrified tissue. Blood vessels have been reversibly vitrified, and an entire kidney has been recovered and successfully transplanted, with long-term survival after vitrification at a temperature of a negative 135 degrees Celsius. The third fact is methods for repairing structure at the molecular level can now be foreseen. The emerging science of nanotechnology will eventually lead to devices capable of extension tissue repair and regeneration, including repair of individual cells one molecule at a time. This future nanomedicine could theoretically recover any preserved person in which the basic brain structures encoding memory and personality remain intact. More than 100 people have been cryopreserved since the first case in 1967. More than 1,000 people have made legal and financial arrangements for cryonics with one of the several organizations, usually by means of affordable life insurance. Alcor, a life extension foundation, starts cryonic procedures within moments of cardiac arrest. Blood circulation and breathing are artificially restored, and series of medications are administered to protect the brain from the lack of oxygen. Rapid cooling also begins, which further protects the brain. The goal is to keep the brain alive by present-day criteria for as long as possible into the procedure. It is not always possible to respond so rapidly and aggressively. Legally, Alcor fought and won many legal actions to establish and protect the right of individuals to choose cryonic suspension in the state of California. Alcor fought considerably that the clients were able to be used because they were already deceased and had willfully decided to participate in cryonic suspension. The cost of cryonics is usually paid through insurance. However, these stipulations depend on the individual's health and age. Alcor specifically offers two options to cryonics, such as whole body preservation, which starts at a minimum policy of $200,000, or neuropreservation, which requires a minimum policy of $80,000. With that being said, if survival of structure means survival of a person, if code can preserve essential structure with sufficient fidelity, if foreseeable technology can repair injuries of the preservation process, then cryonics should work, even though it cannot be demonstrated to work today. That is the scientific justification for cryonics.